My name is Ethan Vale. I'm 34 years old, and for the past 7 years, I worked as a senior analyst at one of the top firms in the city. I was never the loudest voice in the room, but I was reliable, thorough, and always one step ahead when it came to solving problems. People came to me for answers. My numbers spoke for themselves. But all of that changed the moment my new boss, Victoria Lang, stepped into power. From the very first day, something about her attention felt different, too personal, too calculating, and I made the mistake of thinking I could keep things professional by staying quiet. The first time she invited me to dinner, I assumed it was a team-building thing. I declined politely, said I had plans with family. She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't read. The second time, a few weeks later, she made it sound more like a private celebration for how well we'd been working together. I said no again, this time offering to treat the whole team to lunch instead. She laughed it off, said I was humble to a fault. But the air between us shifted. Something cold crept into her voice after that. By the third invitation, I knew it wasn't innocent. She cornered me in the hallway after hours, no one else around. She leaned in close, her voice low and rehearsed. "I don't like to repeat myself, Ethan." I stepped back and replied, "I'm not comfortable mixing work and personal relationships." I said it as calmly and respectfully as I could. She didn't argue. She just smiled, that same quiet, dangerous smile. But it didn't reach her eyes. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Things changed fast after that. Deadlines that were once flexible became suffocating. Reports I submitted, meticulous, accurate, were suddenly full of errors. Meetings I was supposed to lead got reassigned to others. My access to certain files began disappearing without explanation. I was being iced out, little by little. But instead of panicking, I started documenting every change, every snide remark, every out-of-place decision. I knew I couldn't fight back openly, not yet, but I could prepare. Then came the email, cold, official, and vague. "We regret to inform you that your role is being terminated effective immediately due to restructuring." No severance. No explanation, just a shut door. I sat there, staring at the screen, hearing her voice in my head from weeks ago. "I don't like to repeat myself." That's when I opened the folder I'd been building for over a month. Screenshots, emails, time-stamped audio notes, everything she never imagined I'd keep. Because what she didn't know was that I had been silently preparing my response since the first time she made me uncomfortable. She thought I was just another employee she could quietly erase, but I wasn't. I was her reckoning in a suit and tie. The day after I was fired, I didn't sleep in, I didn't sulk, I didn't text my old coworkers for sympathy. I went to the small wooden box under my bed, the one I hadn't touched since college. Inside was my voice recorder. I'd started using it again the day Victoria pulled me into that hallway, not out of fear, but out of instinct. Some people draw swords when threatened. I open folders, take notes, press record. That's how I've always survived, by staying calm when others expect collapse. I took the morning to organize everything. I made digital backups. Every screenshot, every red flag email, every subtle shift in protocol she'd made after I declined her invitations. The real prize, though, was the audio. In one clip you can hear her saying, "People who aren't team players usually don't last long here." It sounded harmless out of context, but placed against the timeline of her invitations and my quiet refusals, it built a story that was hard to dismiss. A story of retaliation, a story of coercion. I reached out to an employment attorney, Holland and Keyes, one of the best in the city. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic from them, just guidance. But after 20 minutes on the phone, The lawyer asked to meet in person. She said I might have something stronger than a simple wrongful termination claim. This looks like a hostile work environment built around rejected advances, she said. And if you're telling me this was the third time she pursued you, we're no longer talking just about paperwork. We're talking about a potential harassment lawsuit with career-ending consequences. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. There's a difference. I wasn't looking to destroy her life, but I refused to be another name crossed off a list because someone in power thought they could make people uncomfortable and walk away untouched. And maybe it was because I'd always played it safe, always kept the peace, but this time I wasn't going to disappear quietly. The lawyer helped me draft a formal complaint to HR, including transcripts, timelines, and corroborating evidence, but we didn't submit it yet. Instead, we waited. We wanted her to feel secure, to think I'd slinked off, defeated. Let her settle into that illusion. Let her tell her version of the story, one where I was incompetent, uncooperative, unstable. I knew what she'd say. I knew exactly how she'd try to frame it. And I let her write her own trap. Because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be documented. And once it is, it becomes a blade no amount of charm can blunt. 2 weeks passed. I kept my head down. Let the silence do its work. Victoria didn't know what I was planning, and that was the point. Her confidence ballooned in my absence. I heard from a former colleague that she told the board I had become emotionally erratic, unfocused, and unsuitable for leadership. She was laying the groundwork to cover her tracks, assuming I had no fight left. But while she performed damage control, I was finalizing a strategy. My attorney reached out to a legal media outlet known for publishing workplace misconduct stories with full anonymity. They were interested, very interested. Not because I was some high-ranking executive, but because the story was too clean, too unnerving. A quiet employee fired days after declining a private dinner with a superior, with recorded evidence, time-stamped retaliation, and a pristine performance record to contrast it. They didn't just see a lawsuit, they saw a message, a warning for others in power who thought professionalism could be weaponized for personal gain. We filed the lawsuit on a Thursday morning. It hit her desk by courier before lunch. Hostile workplace environment, sexual harassment, wrongful termination, retaliation. Each word typed with surgical precision. I didn't want anything exaggerated. And my lawyer honored that. I just wanted the truth exactly as it happened, laid bare and undeniable. That afternoon, the phone calls started. First from HR, then from legal. I didn't answer either. I let my attorney do the talking. Then came the message from a former colleague. Dude, Victoria is losing it. She stormed out of the meeting this morning. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just closed my laptop, stood up, and stretched. The world was finally realigning, one quiet step at a time. I learned something about people like Victoria. They don't see you until you become a problem. Until then, your background. Convenient, dismissible. But once you threaten the image they've carefully crafted, once you quietly pull the thread, they unravel faster than anyone expects. Because the confidence they wear is stitched together by control, not character. And when control slips, their true self shows. A week later, the company's lawyers reached out with a settlement offer. It wasn't small, but it came with one condition: silence. No media, no story, no record. My lawyer relayed the offer, waiting to see my reaction. I asked her one question. Will accepting this protect the next person she tries this with? She shook her head slowly. Probably not. Then I said, then we're just getting started. Victoria had built her entire career on being untouchable. She wore success like armor, sharp heels, power suits, carefully curated online posts about leadership and resilience. But her reputation wasn't rooted in integrity. It was manufactured, stitched together with charm and intimidation. She never expected someone like me, a man who sat quietly in meetings, who didn't chase attention, to be the one who'd bring the cracks to light. But now those cracks were turning into fractures. The media story dropped 2 weeks after we declined the settlement. It was anonymous but detailed, careful but piercing. The headline didn't mention her name, but within hours insiders were whispering. The timing was unmistakable. Former employees began commenting anonymously beneath the article. A few even reached out to my lawyer, asking how to come forward. Turns out, I wasn't the first one she'd cornered. I was just the first to say no more. Inside the company, things shifted quickly. A new investigation was opened, this time by external counsel. HR sent out cold, neutral statements, trying to reassure staff. But the fear was palpable. They weren't afraid of Victoria anymore. They were afraid of being complicit. Her allies went silent. The people who once clung to her favor began to distance themselves. Her office door, once always ajar, stayed shut for days. And in that silence, her empire began to dissolve. She sent me a message, just one line. "Why are you doing this?" I didn't respond, not because I didn't have an answer, but because she didn't deserve it. I wasn't doing it to her. I was doing it for the version of myself I silenced every time I tolerated discomfort for the sake of professionalism. I was doing it for anyone who thought saying no meant surrendering their career. I didn't need to explain that to her. The lawsuit already had. Within a month, Victoria was placed on administrative leave. The official statement used the usual language: pending review, no assumptions, internal matter. But everyone knew you can't sweep a pattern under the rug when the rug's already been lifted. And while she scrambled to protect her image, I started rebuilding mine, not just as an employee, but as a man who finally stood up for himself in the most professional way possible. You'd think I felt vindicated, but I didn't. I just felt steady, calm, because I never shouted. I never sought revenge. I let the truth speak, and it did, louder than any accusation ever could. Victoria didn't return from her leave. One Monday morning, an internal memo circulated quietly. No public announcement, no farewell, just a sterile notice from the board. Effective immediately, Victoria Lang will no longer be with the company. That was it. No glory, no goodbye post, just erasure, as swift and silent as the one she tried to subject me to. Only this time, she wasn't the one holding the pen. But I wasn't interested in watching her fall. I didn't refresh her social media or scan headlines for updates. I had already turned the page. The lawsuit was still moving forward, not for personal gain, but to make sure there was a record, something permanent, something that wouldn't get swept under a rug the next time someone like her decided that power gave them permission. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was just refusing to be erased. I got a message from an intern. I barely remembered. She said she'd been in meetings where Victoria made her feel small, invisible. I thought I was the only one, she wrote. What you did gave the rest of us permission to speak. That message meant more than any dollar amount in the lawsuit, because that's what people don't always understand. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It's in the quiet restoration of someone's dignity. It's in giving others a voice when they thought they had none. The company, now under new leadership, offered me my position back, a raise, a team of my own, an apology of sorts. Though no one said the words directly, I turned it down. Not out of spite, but because I had found something greater than a title. I had found clarity. I used my severance, combined with the legal settlement, to start a consultancy firm focused on ethical workplace dynamics. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't create a brand or post about it online. I just built something solid, quiet and true, just like I had always done. And people came. Not because I made noise, but because they heard the silence I left behind and realized it mattered more than the applause. Victoria faded. Her name disappeared from corporate circles. No LinkedIn updates, no speaking events, just stillness. I don't wish her harm. I hope, in some way, she faced herself, because power can't protect you from consequences. Eventually, what's buried climbs to the surface, and when it does, it doesn't scream. It simply stands. It's strange how quiet justice feels when it finally arrives. There's no fanfare, no dramatic music, no swelling applause, just a kind of peace that settles over your life like early morning fog, soft, still, and undeniable. I didn't need revenge headlines or viral sympathy. I just needed to know that I wasn't crazy, that my voice mattered, and that what she did wasn't going to disappear like so many other untold stories. I walked past my old office building last month, just a walk, nothing more. I stood across the street for a moment, coffee in hand, watching people pass in and out of the revolving doors. They looked the same as I once did, busy, tired, hopeful. I wondered how many of them were swallowing discomfort to keep a paycheck. How many were telling themselves that silence was safer? I wanted to tell them that dignity is not something you trade for approval. That silence might buy time, but it won't buy peace. I never got an apology from Victoria. But I didn't need one. Her silence said enough. The absence of her name from the industry, the way people quickly shifted their loyalties, the way she disappeared without ceremony, that was the closing chapter. And I didn't have to write a single word of it. She did that herself. I built my new life slowly, with care. My consultancy isn't flashy, but it's honest. Clients come because they want to build workplaces where people feel safe, heard, and respected. And I know firsthand how much that matters. I work with companies who are trying to get it right from the beginning, so no one else has to sit through what I did just to protect their boundaries. Looking back, I don't regret any part of what I did. Not the silence, not the lawsuit, not the refusal to settle early for a payout that would have buried the truth. I didn't want hush money. I wanted change. And change never comes from comfort. It comes from courage, quiet, steady courage. So here's what I'll leave you with. Never underestimate the power of saying no when it matters. Never assume silence means surrender. And never forget that even the smallest voice, when backed by truth and patience, can bring down the loudest empire. She thought rejecting her meant weakness. She thought firing me meant she'd won. But the truth was never the one on trial. She was. And this time, the quiet man had the final word.